What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Technically Speaking Live. It is Wednesday. I have no idea what that just was. Something just fell upstairs, and so sorry if you heard that, but it is Wednesday with Technically Speaking Live, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as always, and 10 a.m. somewhere in Australia. Today's show's different. I'm just going to come out and say it. It is a very different show today. You're not going to see Stats. Stats and I have talked. I had a thought for today's show, and that thought changed a little bit, and now I'm actually just going to go ahead and say it is, with everything going on in the world, I would be remiss to say that we're going to talk about something tech related. That ain't going to happen. I want to tell you this right now is like, we are not talking about tech today. There is too much going on in the world, and I actually have a monologue that I want to go through, and I have it up on a screen right here in front of my face. And so you're going to see me peer off over here on the one side, just so I can say, hey, I want to reference these talking points that I have. I'm not sure what Turkey Doodles L is. I have a thought of who I think it might be, but I'm not entirely sure who that is. So thank you, Turkey Doodles, and thank you, Andrew, and everybody coming on. And Jim, welcome to the show. But yeah, there is a lot of stuff going on in the world. There are other live show streams that I know of that are not doing their live show tonight because they didn't feel that it was appropriate. And full disclosure, I had big plans for what I wanted this show to be. And it changed a little bit, and that's no fault. That's not a big deal in terms of how it's changed. But I toiled with the idea if I wanted to do a live stream tonight because I didn't know if it was appropriate for me to do a live show. So let me start by saying this. If you go back in the Wayback Machine, when Greg and I were on this channel, we had this steadfast rule that said no politics, no potentially inflammatory topics, or anything that could drive dissension into the viewers. And there was a reason. And the reason was, as content creators, we are told that we have to stay on brand 24/7, no questions asked. We have to stick to our lane. And Jonathan Morrison made a great video earlier this week that talked about it. As content creators, there are many times where we are attacked. Attacked is a loose term, right? We're told, stay in your lane, tech boy. You don't need to actually go out and talk about the real world. Well, you know what? That's not going to happen today. And that's not what's going to happen in today's live show, because today's live show is actually for humanity. That's exactly what it is. Today's show is for humanity. And I'm not going to stick to my tech lane. And this is not going to be a typical live show to where I'm going to be this happy-go-lucky person, because there's bigger things afoot right now in the world. See, YouTube and all social media is portrayed as this great big escape, quote unquote, a place where you can go to forget the world. And unfortunately, social media is actually distracting people from a way more detrimental pandemic than COVID-19. And so you can't hide from this pandemic, and you can't TikTok or YouTube or Instagram your way out of it. And I'm going to tell you right now, you shouldn't, because we need to recognize what this pandemic is. And it's been around a lot longer than people are really willing to address or even come to terms with. And honestly, it's the systemic racism within the United States. See, racism is actually woven into the very fabric of the United States. And so I want to talk about that. And this is why I went back and forth with whether I wanted to talk about that, because we have been inundated with this. But I have thoughts and I have feelings that I have had to ask several of my friends to say, like, do I have the right to feel this way? And I was talking with Kev the Tech Ninja, who's been on this show a lot, and he goes, he really pushed me to get on today's show. I'll be honest. So Kevin, if you're out there listening, he is the single biggest reason why I did today's show, is because I'll be honest, I was afraid to say the words that I'm about to say. And they need to be said. And I have a platform, albeit a very small platform. In the grand scheme of things, there are way bigger content creators than me. But I am somebody who is on the internet, and I have, a handful, a dozen people that might listen to me. And we have to do something. Something has to change. This can't keep going. I read an article earlier that said they're comparing the year 2020 to the year 1968. 1968. That was 52 years ago. You mean to tell me the United States, we've put men on the moon, we've built towers to reach the sky, we've built computers that used to be as big as a room, and now I have a computer that I can put in my pocket and you can reach anyone, anywhere in the world at any given time. We can develop all of that. We can develop all of that. And the United States still hasn't figured out how to fix racism. It's a fundamental, systemic failure that we have allowed to continue and allowed to poison the society. It is just continuous. It never stops. And here's the thing. And I can already picture in my head the people out there talking about it. Well, you're a white person. And you know what? As a white person, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know and understand what my black friends and my black family go through. And I say family, meaning there are black people that I refer to as family. They are very close to me, and I love them with all of my heart. And people who know me deep down know when I say those words, I 100% mean it. But when we have black men murdered on video with a knee to their neck, unable to get a breath, or because they decided to go for a run, white people, you don't understand what that's like. White people don't have to worry about being pulled over randomly or handcuffed when they happen to be in an area because of the color of our skin. You know why? It's because of white privilege. White privilege exists. White people can walk through Central Park bird watching. They can go to Starbucks in Philadelphia to meet friends for coffee, and they don't have to worry about potentially not making it home to see their spouse, their children, their mother, or their father. Why? Because they have white on their skin. That's why. Earlier today, I had a moment with my daughter. My daughter, she's 4, my youngest. We came up with this thing. And it was just something completely off the top, just completely in the moment. I look at her and I said her name and I said, and I made a heart. And then I really quickly pointed to her and say, I love you. And so she picked up on that pattern. And so she would look at me and she would go, Daddy. And I'd go look at her and she'd go, and she would point her fingers really quick and she would giggle and she would laugh. And that's a moment that I got to share with my daughter. But now think about it from this perspective. What happens if you're a black man or woman and you get murdered in the street because of the color of your skin, and your 4-year-old doesn't get to have those moments, doesn't get to share those moments and create those unique memories or those special moments because of the color of their skin? See, us as white people, we don't get to understand that because of the color of our skin. You don't have to worry about your mother or your father, your son, daughter, grandparent, or even your own self being killed over the color of your skin. And as a white person, I can already hear some folks out there saying, well, let's just, stop assuming that a black person is playing the race card, white people. I understand. Listen to their words. The words matter. And their words matter just as much as yours do, as mine do. Better yet, listen when they don't talk and when there are no words. Listen when they take a knee. Think about everything's been in the NFL right now. Listen when they're not talking, when they're taking a knee. It's not hard. Listen when they take that knee. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, arguably one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Many kids looked up to them in the early, 70s, 80s, and things of that nature. Said that protests are the voice of the powerless, and our black friends and family cannot do this alone. So don't you think that black people would have stopped racism hundreds of years ago alone if they could have? They're not just dragging this along because they want that. They've wanted to stop this for hundreds of years. So guess what, white people? And that includes myself. The only way racism stops is, you guessed it, with us, white people. You see, a lot of people will forget about this within a few weeks. And I'm sure that even people will say that I'm guilty and accused of doing the same thing. But that's not it. You have to demand more from your white officials, your white employers, the white people in power, and you need to hold those folks accountable for their actions that violate basic human rights. Basic human rights. All humans deserve basic human rights. This includes everyone, and in some cases holding certain roles to higher levels of standards, because there are some roles in society that cannot have bad apples, flat out. Chris Rock, love the comedian, said it best. Some jobs simply cannot have bad apples. Surgeons, pilots, police officers. We should demand and expect all of our police officers to be good apples. Let's not forget when someone says, there's just a few bad apples out there. The full saying actually is, a few bad apples spoil the bunch. A few bad apples spoil the bunch. The bunch. You have to come to terms, and when I say you, I mean white people, and I'm referring to myself, white people. You have to come to terms with the fact that you do have white privilege. And it affords you more in today's society than people with different color skin. Straight up. White privilege exists. You cannot ignore it. Punching you right in the face with these facts. Your inability to deal with your own privilege prevents the reform needed to make actual change. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Your inability to deal with your own white privilege prevents the reform that's needed to make an actual change in today's society. So yeah, white people, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to sack up and do this together. Expand your circles. Reach out. Listen, there is a link in the description that I have right now. Go out, donate. Black lives do matter. I was going to have some folks on the show that were going to have black creators. I have an open Skype if any black creators want to join. I've had many black creators on this show. I call many people friends because of that. And can we also stop with the I don't see color thing? If you don't see colors, then you don't see patterns. Okay, there's a systemic problem with that. If you look statistically, I'm a data guy, and as Kev the Tech Ninja will tell you, constantly joking around with it, I do a lot of computational what's or forevers, or what's it who's it's that I always say. There are patterns. You can look up the statistics to say it. There is a systemic racial issue in the United States. The only way we're going to pull this off together is by white people realizing that the privilege exists. Straight up. And that's it. I've connected with a ton of people. Kevin, I appreciate that. I'm honored to call you a friend as well. I was really nervous to say tonight's show. I wrote it down. Many people know I wing everything. These words mattered to me tonight. I wanted people to understand. My platform is very small, in all things considered. But this is a real thing. And I'm just going to say this. I know that there was a comment about all lives matter. Let me just back up a second on that. This is I'm not calling anybody out, none of that stuff. I hear you. There is a good euphemism that's out there. I don't know if that's the right word, that talks about if a house was being burned down and a firefighter was putting water on all the other houses because all of the other houses mattered, you would be really pissed off if your house burned down. And while I get the sentiment, here's really where the problem is. That is assuming that all the houses were created equal, and with the systemic racism and the racism that is woven into the fabric of the United States. And when I mean that, I mean literally the founding fathers of the United States had slaves literally woven into the Constitution. Yeah. Not all lives are created equal at this point because of the way that the United States is. It's unfortunate. Trenton, you got to have Skype though. Sorry, that's my thing. I'll DM you real quick. as soon as I can get Twitter up. Pull this up. Share link. Copy link. Trenton, I'm going to drop you a Twitter DM. Sorry, I normally would do something like this, but I wasn't prepared, to be 100% honest. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, crap. Okay, Trenton, I just sent you the... I'm going to go through the comments real quick. Sorry, folks. So normally I would have a lot of words, and I have words and things like that. Miss Sheila, you're right. Has to start with us. Has to start with us. Kevin, again, I appreciate my friend. Miss Sheila, you're right. I admit I used to be the person like I don't see color, like, and it was my ignorance when I said that, because I didn't necessarily know what that meant, and then I was like, oh, there's patterns, there's things like that. I appreciate if there was messages being deleted. And obviously, you know that I was paying more attention to trying to read my script. And I know, Kevin, you told me to speak from the heart, and like I really do truly mean those words. Like I meant everything that I said. Here comes Trenton real quick. Trenton, I'm gonna get you added to the show real quick.
Okay.
My brother, how are you? Hopefully everybody can hear him. I know I can hear him.
Testing 1 2 3.
How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How's it going?
Good. I do have to say one thing before, like, to lighten it just a little bit. I have watched Trenton take the most epic Happy Gilmore swing ever on a golf course, and the man absolutely obliterated the golf ball. It was hilariously epic, and I have it on film too, which is even better.
Man, I gotta get that clip again because I don't know what I did with it.
I'll get it. I get you. I get it. Sound and video is good. Trenton, my friend, welcome to the show. Like, yeah. I don't, to be honest, like I'm very rarely at a loss for words, but I want to open up my platform as much as I can. Like I said, it's not a big platform, and I've had the honor of meeting you. I know you, and I wouldn't say like super, super well, but more than just your casual Twitter follower. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say out of all of this. It's, yeah, I can't understand. I can't even begin to understand.
Well, what's crazy is for some people it's a normal everyday thing. For others it's a surprising, shocking thing, like how in the world could this be going on? But when you lived it for so long, or you've seen it for so long, you actually become numb to it. Even when I watched the video, like I had that initial outrage, reaction, but then in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, okay, here we go again. There might be a charge, there may not be a charge, there'll be some paid leave, he'll go to court, probably get a slap on the wrist, maybe even get exonerated, and thus starts the process over again. So when you see it so many times, you're just like, even though you'll be mad, you'll just be like, all right, here, let's go through the motions, And it sounds bad to say that, but that's how it is.
That's the thing is, it's like, and this is probably one of the biggest for me is, again, can't say for me again. I don't understand as a white person. I don't understand this because you guys deal with so much other crap than we do. So let me just say that much. But the individual in Minnesota, I don't remember his name, the police officer that murdered George Floyd. And to be honest, the murderer's name doesn't matter. He literally on video murdered a person, and now we're squabbling over the fact that his charges were increased to second-degree murder, and people are going, that's kind of dangerous because now he might be able to get by or get off on the charge. And I'm like, there is a freaking video right here, and it's because, again, woven into the fabric of America, our justice system is racist that way. I mean, folks, plain as day, it's video. The old argument used to be, well, like, yeah, but it's not on video. If it's not on video, you can't prove anything. Literally just watched it on video.
Yeah. So the crazy thing about that is because even I had some reservations about the charge and what was going on, because I had a couple of schools of thought. So my first school of thought was, okay, charge him with something that you can actually prosecute him on, because I feel like things would be even worse or even, revert if he were exonerated when he clearly, was squeezing the life out of that man. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, do you go with third degree manslaughter because maybe you can't prove the intent to kill? And that's where a lot of people are getting wrapped up in like the language and the legality. Then the other part is where you go up to second degree, which is a more severe charge, which also carries a more severe punishment, but it also increases the difficulty that you can prove without a shadow of a doubt, that you can make that charge stick. And that kind of gets into that territory of you're taking more risk to give him more time, but you're also increasing his chances of him possibly getting off. Mm-hmm. And so the other school of thought, and this is something that I haven't seen anyone else bring up, which I think may be this may be the actual strategy. So you increase the charge to second degree, and that's what you're going for. Your defense lawyer, or whichever lawyer he gets, let's say they're good or bad or whatever, they may say, well, hey, we know you can't prove, second degree, but we're willing to admit guilt to third degree or third degree, whatever, as opposed to starting off with third degree murder and then having it go down to third degree manslaughter. So that is something else that could be in there.
You can bring him on. Hey, man, you can bring him on the show. You know that. He is always welcome.
I got to get him some water, so I'll be right back.
It's fine. It's fine. And Jim, you'd mentioned the same thing. Is like there are 4 others. Is like, and I have to think, my goodness, there were 3 other officers that sat back and watched this go down. Sat back and watched. Like, why? And I personally don't understand. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why, as 3 other officers, your job is to protect and serve. Why did you allow your one officer to do what he was doing? And then you had 3 other officers. You had 4 total officers for this one man. And I had to explain to my son, because my son said, well, what did he do? And I had to explain to him, like, well, we don't actually know what he did. They're like, well, why did he handcuff him? I don't know. Why were they laying on top of him? And in the past 90 days or 120 days, I've had to explain to my children what a pandemic is, why they can't see their friends anymore. And now I have to explain because when they're on their iPhones or their iPads and all of a sudden they get an emergency broadcast, and my daughter goes, what's a curfew? They're getting a social studies lesson from my wife and I, and we're going, okay, well, I guess here we go. We're going to explain to you exactly what a riot is and what a protest is, and they're asking these questions, all under the age of 10, by the way. Of, yeah, but why are you laying on top of him when he's handcuffed? Great question. You're at 8 and 10 years old asking that question.
Yep. And the funny part about that is the different upbringings that a lot of people go through, because like, when you grow up black, you kind of know all that stuff. Like, I knew at age 6 to, be at home before, the street light came on, because your parents wanted to make sure you got in the house and that you were safe. Also, that you didn't get caught out in the later hours, because, if you're black and your children are out, right, and like the police pick them up or whatever, and you're not around, there's a higher chance of your kids being taken away from you because you're an unfit parent.
And the thing is like, and you want to, like I'd mentioned the privilege before. I remember routinely as a kid being out way past dusk, riding my bike, being out by, like, in our backyards. We used to have this green box that had the electrical stuff in it. I routinely remember being out way past dark. That's literally the definition of white privilege right there. Yeah. And
so,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead, man. Floor is yours.
No, I was saying, and it's just, there's just different things, like different upbringings that you go through. And that's where it's like a lot of people are having a hard time explaining it, because once again, they haven't really been exposed to it. They don't see it as much. Whereas if you see it, you can break it down in less than 5 minutes. Don't do this, don't go here, don't say this, don't do that. I mean,
the toughest thing is like, I look at some of the, the protests and things going on right now. No one's doing anything wrong. No one's doing anything wrong. The protests are peaceful. You have one half of the people showing up to the protest that are in full body armor, looking like they're about ready to go to war with weapons.
Yep. And a lot of that goes to the recent militarization of police.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't even explain I can't even explain it all, but I know enough to where it's just like, it seems like they would rather escalate the situation than de-escalate the situation, because one, escalating the situation leads to a quicker arrest, leads to a quicker charge, leads to a quicker court date, you paying money into the system, blah, 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 blah. De-escalation actually takes time.
Mm-hmm.
De-escalation is looked at by some as a weakness, like, hey, I'm the one with the gun and the power. Why am I bowing down to you? Why am I, you should be respecting me. That type of a feel towards it. And then, that's the sentiment, is that, before, like, I don't even know what time period to go at, but at some point it was like where police were more like community leaders, and like, they understood, different things that were going on. Whereas now it's like they're like the bully on the street that you don't want to cross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's like, I don't know what I would get in terms of, if I go down to the protests and I'm sitting there on the street, on the sidewalk, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, I could just get maced straight in the face, doing nothing wrong, because that's happening. That's literally happening. There are things where you're seeing these videos where people are attempting to say, hey, it's really hot outside. We want to put stacks of water out for these protesters who, by the way, doing it very peacefully. So they're stacking up water. They're doing these things. And you're seeing video after video after video of, police officers coming through, cutting open water, spraying it all over the place. Why? What is that? What is that doing? What are you doing? Like, and the thing is like, What I don't understand out of all of that, well, what I do understand, so I'll say it both ways, is they're doing it without impunity, meaning they're going to do it because they know they're just going to flat out get away with it. And why? Because of the woven systemic racism. They know they can get away with it. And we just talked about a little bit earlier where we're talking about potentially the risk that you have to take for capturing a murder on video, that murder 2 or 3 may not happen because of the way the justice system is. Are like, guys, are we kidding here? What?
Yep, that's the way it goes. And the other thing about it is, and this once again, these are things that need to be talked about. It's not just racism; it's class
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, because racism is definitely a big part. But one of the things that the system banks on is your inability to fight something in court, or the pretty much the notion of, we're going to make this expensive to where it's not worth your time. So, for example, a lot of times, like, let's say if you're driving and let's say you get hit for a speeding ticket. Okay. You may have been speeding, you may not have been speeding, but you get the speeding ticket. For some states like Ohio, it is cheaper to basically, say you're guilty and admit fault and pay the ticket, and you get points on your license, but it's cheaper than going to court and fighting the ticket. And then, some people will think, well, how is it cheaper? How does it make? Well, the reason why it's cheaper is because, one, it's a one-time fee that you have to pay and then you're done. Going to court is a process. Going to court requires you to call off from your job. Your job now all of a sudden wants to know why you're calling off from work and why you can't be there. And then for some people, they're not going to pay you for that time that you're not there. So that's money that you're losing out on. Then you also have to have money set aside to put towards a lawyer that's going to defend you, because if you show up to traffic court without a lawyer, then it's you versus the prosecutor, you versus the prosecutor, you versus the word of the police officer. And then they're just going to find you guilty anyway, and they're going to tack more fees on top of that. And that's just for a simple traffic ticket. Trying to, do the same thing against a cop is even harder. It requires even more money. It requires even more time and diligence and forms and all of these things that you have to fill out. And for a lot of Black people, they don't either have the time, the resources, or the money to, really do that. So a lot of times, people will look at us and they're just like, well, hey, I could just kick that dude down the street and, oh, well, go ahead, fight me in court. Let's see who wins. Now, if you've got money and power and influence, then sure, you can go straight up and fight that battle straight out. But the fact that you can put a knee on someone's neck, have other people pinned down with an 8-minute video, and it still comes into question of, we still need to see all the evidence. It's like,
and I don't understand that. Like, that's the evidence. You murdered somebody on camera. Period. That, full stop. Racial injustice is not okay. Full stop.
The fact that you got to stack that level that high to get to that. And I don't want to make this a white versus Black thing, but there was a video of a cop. He for whatever reason, it was a white girl. She was probably in her teens. She said something to the cop as she was walking away, and the cop got mad and just ran up and pushed her. Now, when he pushed her so hard that she went horizontal. Her head hit the pavement, and she basically, became like vegetative. So she was still alive, but pretty much her brain was gone. Right? They prosecuted that dude so fast and so hard. Like, people cared. People really cared and they were on it. You don't see that same fury, that same intent if that were to happen to a black child, or if that happens to someone where, where they took the lady, they cuffed both of her legs and her arms, hog tie style, and then decided to drag her out the car and carry her into the police station like she was some luggage.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
How about the
we were
fact?
all, we were all pissed about that, but everybody else was like, okay, was she on drugs? What did she do?
How about
That type of deal.
how about the fact that I believe it was Breonna Taylor. It was her. She was in her own home.
Hmm.
The police broke into her home and shot her in her bed. She was asleep because they got mixed up. They got mixed up on the address. She was in her own home,
Yep.
in her own bed, asleep, doing nothing, literally doing nothing. That's not de-escalation. What are you doing? And so, like, I've thrown around this term of systemic racism a lot, and I know there's a lot of smart people out there, way smarter than me, but it goes back so far. There's this concept of redlining where cities start to like mark off certain areas of their whole geographic area to say like this is an up and coming area, typically like suburbs where they have the best homes and the best education because education's fed off of the property tax and all this other jazz. And so these areas of the city, it's just not the same. And like from the jump, it's just not the same. So redlining is leading to bigger, brighter areas of the city that have more money for education, which has more resources, more opportunities for their children. And wouldn't you know it, there's a certain color dynamic that goes with all of that. It's systemic. It's a really, really huge issue. That's the systemic racism that we have to try to overcome. And we have to do this. Everybody has to do this. This isn't an option anymore. It's just
Yep.
not. Excuse me, I had to
And
burp.
that's no, you're fine. And it's such a hard battle to fight because you know one, you can come up with like simple you can kind of come up with like a simple fix to it, but at the same time all of those have like different things and different things that you have to deal with. But it's like for right now, so injustice happens, then people protest. Well, then you have multiple sides. You have the protesters who are doing it the right way. Then you have the rioters and the looters who are blending in with the protesters and doing damage for their own selfish reasons.
Mhm.
Then you have, let's say, the bad apple cops who are like, well, I'm just going to do whatever. And then you have the good cops who are like, they're torn because it's like, okay, do I tell on my partner because there's that whole fraternity of police,
Mm-hmm.
or do I just do my job and try not to get in the way? And it's very, very complicated.
Yeah.
It's not a quick, simple resolution.
Yeah. I'm in it for the long haul. I mean, you know me. You know how I am. I mean, don't know me like I'm your bestie or anything like that, but you know me better than others. And so you know kind of how I am. I've joked around with everybody. I think Miss Sheila brings to a point. It's a hard battle to fight, maybe because you're fighting alone. This is changing. Like for me personally, this feels different. But again, for me, that's the way it feels. I don't know how it feels from your perspective if this feels different.
It feels different because of what has actually taken place. So, um, I was around for the Tamir Rice incident. I was around for the Eric Gardner incident. I was around for Trayvon Martin. And even though that a lot of these incidents were, horrible in nature, the response was not of that of what you saw a couple of days ago. Never in my lifetime, I'm pretty sure other people have seen this in their lifetime, Never have I seen in my lifetime buildings burn because people are so frustrated across multiple cities, not just one city, multiple cities.
All 50 states.
Never have I seen a president come out and say that there's going to be a curfew and we're going to use the military if the police, quote unquote, can't get it done. And just that illicit reaction is something that it's like, okay, maybe this might be different, or maybe other people might see this for once.
So let me ask you this from your perspective to me is how can I help? Like as a white person and me admitting everything that I just said, 40 minutes ago, what else can I do?
Really, the only thing I can say, the only thing I can say is, if you see something wrong, say something, or like even if let's say you have family members, right, and they're not, hardcore hood wearing charging racist. Not like no, it's just you know a lot of racism is passive. It's taught, it's learned behavior, it's stereotypes. So when you start to see stuff like that, that's when you want to like go out and educate somebody, because it's that passive racism that leads to the phone call, that leads to the misinformation, that leads to the cop showing up with the wrong information, already expecting the wrong thing. That's just something that you would be able to do just as a regular person. Now, as far as the police are concerned, that requires a higher amount of participation in things that need to change. But usually I just tell people, like, there's a lot of stuff that you can stop at the lower level before, because I know some people like they're literally like 911, like the phone is built into their hand. Someone steps on their lawn, someone accidentally goes into their backyard, like, what I'm saying? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
just instantly ready to go 911. And what a lot of people don't realize is you call 911 in an emergency, meaning it's an emergency. You just don't call 911 because you see someone in your neighborhood that you don't recognize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But a lot of people think it's cool to do that. They're and of course, the dispatcher, they're thinking like, okay, if you're calling 911,
There's something wrong.
this has to be an emergency.
Man, I remember dialing 911 when I was a kid. I thought my mom was going to snatch my hair off my head. Ooh, man, I never dialed it. I never dialed it then. Maybe even the house could have been burning down. I'd be afraid to dial it. Like, ooh, is this an actual emergency? Should I be dialing this now?
Right.
So I remember that. Yeah. Dude, I appreciate you coming on. Like, yeah, it's I like I said, I'm very rarely at a loss for words and to say like what I should do and how I can help. So like, I mean, I know that you would always just message me and be like, hey dude, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And we have that kind of relationship where we can do that. Dean says, everybody proclaims the system is broken, but I've not heard one person in your country or mine, because Dean is over in the UK, give the answer. I've heard zero suggestions for the bigger picture solution. And that's the thing is like, and this goes back to my privilege comment before, is I think there are people in positions of power that know damn well that there is white privilege and that privilege is keeping them in power. I think coming up with the solution is not necessarily the biggest issue to overcome.
You know what? I'll jump in on that.
Okay,
So
please do.
The solution, right, is to not make it money based.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
It's hard. It requires some thinking and some tooling, but most of the things that go on right now are money driven, and usually the people who are the poorest, suffer the hardest. And in this society that we have to have an enemy. That is the way
Mhm.
our society is built. We have to have an enemy. And so we need to get away from looking at our own citizens as enemies.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying, go find a foreign land or somebody foreign to fight, but, you know, if you if you pull somebody over for a traffic infraction, correct?
Mhm.
Don't make the traffic infraction a threat against their livelihood.
Mhm.
Have the traffic infraction be something that they pay and go on about. But, and this goes back to, police departments that are underfunded. Okay. So you have cops who are underfunded by the state or underfunded by the government. So what are they going to do? They're going to go out and they're going to go find the people that they can get easy money from.
Yeah, because
And
that's how they
then,
get their money.
right. Or they're going to target people that can't fight back. So if you want an answer, stop targeting people that can't fight back. Stop bowing down to the richest people on earth, the wealthiest people on earth, the private corporations that are trying to run everything. Make lobbying illegal. You know, why should a big oil company be allowed to pay millions of dollars to influence a politician to write a law that's in favor of them and not the masses? That's something that we could change. But once again, it becomes another conversation. It's like there's solutions there, but it's like the feasibility in trying to overcome the overwhelming amount of control and power that's in place. That's the issue. And so that's where I guess I kind of come back to, voting for people. And, somebody has to make a sacrifice, but most people aren't going to be willing to make that sacrifice.
There's an old saying that goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it's the situation where there is a lot of wealth, and there are certain things that people at that level expect. And a lot of the solution is around that wealth, and people are afraid to give that up. I mean, that's just how it is. Like, the people are afraid of giving up money. It is a money game. It's unfortunate. We see it everywhere. Like, Jeff Bezos makes how much money per second? More than most people make in a lifetime,
Right.
unfortunately. And that's just the truth. Like, statistics don't lie. How much money Jeff Bezos makes per second is sometimes more than most people make in a lifetime. And that is sad. That is
The
sad.
the biggest equalizer, in my opinion, is if the law was equal across the board. So if you're someone that's rich and you kill someone, okay, you go to the same jail or the same prison a poor person would go to. And of course, people talk about, oh, well, there will be threats on their lives. People are trying to extort them for money. No, you should have known that. You should have known, the consequences of what's going to happen, whether you have money or not. That's just a basic human right. You know, remember that kid, the affluenza teen?
Oh my God. Yeah, the kid from
And
California or Texas,
their,
one of the two.
yeah, their excuse for him drunk driving and killing the other passengers and the car that he hit was because he had too much money and his parents didn't teach him right from wrong.
Yep. What?
And he didn't he's not locked up. He's not in prison.
Mm-mm.
But if a poor person does that, or someone who's the wrong skin tone does that,
Evidently, my
I mean,
light my light just went out.
you got people serving 10 to 15 years for weed.
Mm-hmm.
For weed.
And a lot of times in those situations, in some of those states, it's legal now.
Yep. So that's my answer. You have to make punishment equal across the board.
Yep. Well, Trenton, I appreciate you coming on the show, brother. You know this.
Yeah.
And you always have an open invitation. I always say that to everybody that comes on the show. Open invitation, of course. Really different show today. Trenton, I was going to say, plug your socials, man. You have a great channel.
Oh, yeah. You can find me if you type in Trenton Marshall in YouTube or Tech Rant, because my channel hasn't really I don't know. I changed the name of it to just me, but it really hasn't switched over all the way. And then you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Tech Rant. And I think I'm on Instagram as Mr. Tech Rant as well.
Got those socials nailed down.
Yep.
You can find me, and you know where to find me. All the links are in the description below. I appreciate this. Again, really different show. I felt it was really important to get out there, the little platform that I do have. Thanks, everybody, for coming in, watching, listening to the show. Evidently, my light went off, so that must mean that it's done listening to me blabber on. So, yeah, I'll see you out there in the wild YouTube world, and let's just keep this thing going. There is a link in the description where you can go out and donate. If you can't donate, there's ways you can donate for free. You can go out and stream, and all the monetization from certain videos on YouTube will go to some really awesome sources for the Black Lives Matter movement. So check it out, please, please, please. That would be super amazing. Yeah. So, all right, guys, gals, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys again next week. Thanks, Trenton.
Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.